With season 5 of The Chosen closer than ever, they've actually just launched a new series on their YouTube channel called In My Words. So far there's only 2 episodes, but I really wanted to check out these episodes. I haven't seen them yet on purpose so I can watch them with you guys, and let's react to these. Let's talk about these characters and the actors behind them. So let's jump in. Here we go.
My name is Ala Safi. I play Simon the Zealot, or Z. He's one of the disciples, probably the most mysterious and cool disciple of all.
A little biased, I'm sure. Definitely biased from Allah there. Allah is amazing, by the way. Every time I've spoken with him, he's such a nice guy. Like, he's such a great guy to just talk to and listen to in terms of how he thinks about his character and different things like that. I know that he's watched my channel at certain points because he said previously that he's learned things about his character from our channel, which is great. So he's a really, really cool guy. But he's right. Simon the Zealot is definitely the most mysterious, seeing as we don't get a single line of dialogue or really anything in the Bible about him other than just his name.
Said. Copyrighted. I'm just drawn to, troubled characters, and I think he's a pretty troubled. To me, he's like the warrior, the samurai of the group. He went to this academy or this school to just train to protect his people and to prepare for the arrival of the Messiah. There's that sense of looking for a belonging, seeking a sense of purpose out of pain. He's this guy who needs to learn how to go non-violence about everything in his life and has to do this U-turn in his life to fully trust. That's something that speaks to me, actually. It's kind of like what I did in my childhood, and I needed something that shaped me. I was constantly picked up on, constantly, and bullied, and actually my father mentioned martial arts to me, and he was like, because I wanted to do soccer like my brother, and my parents just didn't want to have a second son playing soccer. And so
it's interesting because I think of the character of Simon the Zealot. One thing that I'm surprised about, and I'm sure it just is this way because they didn't really have time, is that The Chosen doesn't really they don't really show this huge, massive change for Simon. Remember, Simon is a murderer. We don't really think about it that way because it's never shown on screen. It kind of shows oh, he's just getting into this thing. He's just learning. But he's almost 40 years old, which means he would be a very seasoned murderer, a very seasoned assassin. And so within The Chosen itself, he would be a murderer. And so that's a really intense thing that we don't really get to see too much within the storyline itself. And so this big 180 that Allah is talking about here is very, very true, right? Of course, the 180 that Simon the Zealot has to go through. However, we don't really see the depths of that too much within the show. We don't really see this moment of Simon is about to kill somebody and then he has to turn around, right? It's kind of softened a little bit, I would say, within The Chosen, for Simon specifically. But again, biblically, we don't really have any understanding of who he is or where he came from or what's happening. We just have guesses of who he could be associated with. It just tells us that he's a zealot. We don't even necessarily know that he's part of the Sicarii order, which are assassins, right? We just guess that because it makes the most sense in what we're kind of seeing here. And it's obviously the most dramatic for a TV show.
So when my dad, went, do you want to try karate instead? That was the only idea that seduced me, and I tried it, and it clicked for me because I was like, hey, this is actually what I need. I mean, I got my world champion title in Taekwondo in fighting, and then once I got my title, it was kind of like a wake-up call. I thought, this is supposed to be great. But my opponent was standing next to me on the podium, and he had a black eye, and I'm like, we're celebrating this? This doesn't make sense. And I apologized to him, and I quit after that.
That's interesting to hear, that he would have such compassion for the person that he beat. Yeah, that's so interesting. I don't know if I would have that same problem, being in a sport like that. I don't know if I would have that same problem, but yeah.
That's kind of like the first phase of his life. Bracing, preparing, building himself, strengthening himself, getting ready for the worst. And it's all kind of based on a fearful approach of the world and life. He is called by his superiors among the Zealots and is sent to go and assassinate a Roman magistrate who's been a problem. The very moment where Z is about to pull his dagger to attack, on this side street, he sees his brother walking by. He drops whatever was happening here and goes there because he wants to see his brother. And he asks him who, how, and his brother just points at, that man went into that direction. I kind of interpret it as really the only thing that could stop me from doing whatever I'll do is the arrival of the Messiah. That was big enough of a shift for him to dive into the second phase, which is now I meet the Messiah, he is the Messiah, and I surrender to him. I'm at the service of the Messiah.
Yeah, one question that I had of this section is like with Atticus, he comes later after this, after the dagger is thrown into the Jordan River, and then he takes the dagger, and it shows him at the end of this episode area, or this scene here at least. It shows him actually holding onto that dagger still. So I wonder if in season 5 or in season 6 or whatever, we know in season 5 we're going to get some interplay between Simon the Zealot and Atticus once more, but I wonder if Atticus will ever bring up that dagger again, because he lies to Simon later and says, your dagger is still at the bottom of the Jordan River where you left it, basically. But that's not true, because we see Atticus actually taking it with him. He wraps it up in like a cloth and puts it in his stuff. So I wonder if we'll ever see the resurgence of that as well.
And that's where he just strips me away from my past life, from the dagger, symbolizing everything I believed so far. The Messiah has been telling him so much about there's another way. I have a better sword. I have and he tries it and it works. For example, Rayma's death was something that I kind of struggled with as an actor, because I was thinking, why does the writing not include Simon Z's reaction to that? And that's, I think, the beginning of him really understanding Jesus' word, which is, you're not supposed to run the show, you're not supposed to control anything. That's what Dallas told me on set. He was like, by then he is understanding what Jesus is saying.
Yeah, more than most of the apostles in the show, he's definitely understanding, and he is submitted to Jesus' teachings. Like we see that the washing of the clothes scene, the laundry scene with Judas, right? This scene, clearly Simon by this point is a mentor. He's no longer like this little kid, right? That's like learning. He's really a mentor at this point.
And he's like, I can't save her. I can't bring her back because he doesn't want it. That's not part of the plan. So that powerlessness, which doesn't mean weakness, is starting to kind of appear and to be a thing which grows even stronger after. It's even more present. He goes from superhero conditioning to the most humble version of a person, and that's real growth.
Yeah, so that scene right there. Yeah, very, very cool section. I love hearing just like his thoughts about kind of what's going on. Let's jump over to Elizabeth Tabish. It's funny that she's going by Elizabeth Tabish in a lot of the stuff she has now. So for so long we've called her Liz, and so it's interesting to see that there. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see all of my Chosen Season 5 content and all the other shows that we're going to be talking about this year, I would love for you to join my community over on snipesupport.com. This is my Patreon where you can donate $5, $10, $15 a month in order to help me to continue making videos just like this. We've got a ton of extra content over there, including full live streams. There's a lot of extra good stuff in there, so you're going to want to see all that. If you want the extras, go over to snipesupport.com, and even the $5 tier will get all of those extra videos. So anyway, we'd love to see you over there. Let's continue on with the video.
My name is Elizabeth Tabish. I play Mary Magdalene on The Chosen. She is one of Jesus's followers and disciples. I mean, not officially a disciple, but she is. One of the opening scenes is her waking up from a dream of her father when she was a child, telling her this beautiful psalm. Wakes up from that.
Yeah, I love that first scene, the very first scene that we see there. We say the words, right? When she's talking to her dad, and of course, her dad passing away, all that kind of stuff. she goes through so much trauma in such a short period of time. We often forget where Mary comes from and the long, long years that she spent, doing what she did. It's a crazy story that I don't think we think about too much in The Chosen right now.
That dream with blood on her hands as this man is running through town screaming that she has demons in her. That's the beginning of episode 1, season 1. This is a demon-possessed woman, and we're about to see her journey. These stories and this character and her changes have reminded me of who Jesus really was. She's self-medicating and she drinks herself senseless. Jesus meets her at this bar and follows her outside and repeats the prayer that her father taught her.
It's interesting that she still gets emotionally caught up in that. I'm sure she's talked about this so much. Maybe just she's in her feels kind of thinking about it here. Yeah.
And calls her by her name, which is the first time we as an audience get to hear Mary of Magdalene. And he heals her of her demons. She is redeemed after that. For Mary, it sets her off on this, following Jesus. And in that time span, she, I think, showcases a really realistic depiction of what growth really looks like, which is not super clean, not easy.
It's not linear, yeah.
Not simple, it's not A to B. She's triggered sometimes. She is confronted by a man who is possessed at one point.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes when it comes to Mary Magdalene, because you can see her triggers being set off throughout the episode. First off, running into the Roman at the beginning of the episode, and then once she sees the Roman, you actually see her going back to her tendencies before, where she's drinking a lot of water, right? And we assume it's water. We don't really know what's in her cup. Hopefully she's not getting drunk in the middle of camp, but it's possible, right? And so for her, you see those same mannerisms where she's leaning into the cup and she's drinking more and more. It's almost like an oral fixation or like a habit that she has, right? And so I love this episode as we see that kind of faltering from someone who is following Jesus. This is something that we do on a daily basis, right? And yet when this episode came out, season 2, episode 5, this was one of the most controversial episodes. But there's a lot of truth to it, for sure.
And she has a relapse. She speaks with Jesus, she apologizes, and I think admits this thing that I connected to so much, which was I'm not good enough. And how do I repay you? And I threw it all away. And of course he jokes that if it's lost in a day, then it's not much of a redemption. There's a bigger picture here, there's a bigger story. There are tensions building between Mary and Tamar for a season or two. Mary has struggled.
Yeah, this shows us a lot of Christian friendships and church hurt. I think is a lot of what this lesson was from the Mary and Tamar relationships, for sure.
So much in her pain that she's almost been unable to recognize pain in Tamar. These tensions just build and build until...
Though I will say, I don't think Tamar is 100% we talked about this during season 3, but the tensions of Tamar and Mary, Tamar is not fully good in this either, right? Tamar is still wearing all of her ancestors jewelry and stuff. And while she says that it's because her family died and she's connected to them, all that stuff, it does kind of as they say in the show, smack of this idolatrous sort of connection there, right? Are you really not willing to let this thing go in order to follow Jesus, right? What if we needed money, right, for the ministry and you had to sell those things? Would you be willing to? And it doesn't seem like she was or would be during that time. So it is interesting to think of both sides of that.
They almost can't even talk. Once Mary shares that vulnerability, it allows Tamar to share her own. And that's when Mary does say to her, I'm sorry, forgive me. I judged your strengths against my weaknesses. Tamar even says, Jesus forgave you, you need to forgive yourself. I think that is a pivotal moment in the series. Mary is quite changed after that interaction. We see her over time, without much fanfare, just like slowly dropping that shame and those fears and her past. And
Sure, Mary would never be the type of person in this show to be like, hey, look at me, I'm getting better, right? She's more like, she has too much, she's been shunned for too long to put herself out into the limelight and let everybody know, you know?
so the more she does that, the more she starts focusing on the people around her and those who need her and those who need her advice or her insight to what's going on. Because she's gone through so much, she has a special insight to pain, to trauma, to grief, and to managing those things, and also to darkness, and knowing that life is bittersweet. And those bitter moments are like, they're gonna be there, but aren't we lucky now that we also have the light?
Yeah, super interesting. Mary's character in particular is a fun one because Mary is spoken about quite a bit in the Bible. In fact, she has dialogue and she has moments where she's actually a very important character. She's mentioned more than like half of the apostles, if not more, right? And so I'd say she's mentioned more than most of the apostles, to be fair. And so she obviously has a very important role, which is why she's always connected to these Christian media projects, right? We're seeing her in The Chosen. We've seen her in the Bible series. We've seen her in pretty much every adaptation of the Gospels, right? Why is that? Because she is such an important character, but we don't often think of her as that, right? So through The Chosen, we've really seen this character develop over time and come to a place that's really, really interesting. And she hasn't even hit her stride yet, you know? We've seen some flash forwards of where she's going to be in the future, but we haven't really seen her in the prime of the church, right? As the church is growing and building, and her role in that as well. Of course, her role in the resurrection, all of that is going to be super interesting to see. So excited about it. This is a cool series. I'm interested to see more from this series. I hope they do all the cast and we get to see some of their kind of moments from all this stuff here. So Chosen season 5 coming up super soon. Let me know about your thoughts about the cast. Who's your favorite members of the cast? Let me know in the comments down below. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.